Gentlemen of the craft, once again was good. Welcome back to another episode of the Chronicles of Gameology. I'm your host, Neil K. Marcellus. Yeah, that's checkmate. A OG who was very instrumental in my early development and gaining key insight into the philosophy which is referred to as the concept of game, advised me one time to never trust another man who you know has never tasted his own blood from within his own mouth. Strictly because lies and deceit can be like schools of patient piranhas lurking beneath murky waters. You might not be able to see them, but your game should clearly know that they are there. This pearl of wisdom, this brings us to the female persona and the topic of this episode, which from a street perspective is known as the Dirty Diana type of chick. But a crucial clarification needs to be made, and that is, these types of females are not inherently negative, but they can be some of the most Machiavellian and crafty category of women for a man to contend with, especially if he has a weak and undeveloped catching hand. Now, going into the bio that makes up this female persona from the body of knowledge of the catching hand, OGs taught and advised me that the Dirty Diana type of chick is usually raised by an authoritative, strong, independent mother figure under the overreaching slogan, if I might add, that says, "Mother knows best." But although this motherly figure possesses this type of domineering trait, she makes sure that the daughter, the Dirty Diana type of female, is the opposite, making the daughter very clingy and dependent, telling her to the mandates and instructions of the mother and her overreaching, imposing style of nurturing. With this type of nurturing and her girlish kind of beauty, this produces a chameleon-like capability within the habits and frame of mind of this Dirty Diana type of female persona, which strives to be all things to all men, which makes her actions and mannerisms illogical and off-kilter. And this is extremely challenging for the majority of men, because there is a overall societal and status quo mandate for men to be submerged into material logic. Now, peep what I just said. Not functional logic, but material logic. Einstein, the famous scientist, said it best, cautioning against this overemphasis of this form of logic, where he said, "Not everything that counts can be counted, and not everything that can be counted counts." As a result, a large portion of men are finding themselves wide open and consequently outmaneuvered by this crafty female persona known from a street perspective as the Dirty Diana type of chick. But back to men and their vulnerability. This chink in one's armor or weak point is due to an overemphasis on material logic, pushed heavily by the status quo in the square society. This creates a preponderance of left brain development and a undeveloped right brain, which translates into men being prone to exhibiting exclusively a sequential way of thinking, making them very rigid and lopsided and imbalanced. To put it another way, you can equate this to a man having rhythm versus a man being sluggish and non-flexible. Let's look at it like this. Check out this new image that I'm currently showing you now. It's a concept within the hip-hop genre known as the 4-bar theory. And to demonstrate this sluggishness when it comes to men's thinking, which is a result of an overemphasis of material logic, bobbing one's head to the rhythm and flow echoing from a beat from a hip-hop joint This capability, it all comes down to timing the downward slant of that beat. So, for instance, this rhythm and tempo that is illustrated on this image you are currently looking at, it goes like this. Boom, pop, boom, boom, pop. Now, peep game. A man with rhythm will bob his head on the bop sound illustrated on this image, which is the second and fourth beat within the concept of this 4-bar theory. Whereas a man who is rigid and sluggish within his thinking will instead bob his head on the first and the third of this 4-bar theory. You see, a man must feel and interpret and let the first beat breathe, which is in this scenario would be the first beat, the boom sound on this montage of a hip hop rhythm and groove. Because of the heavily emphasis on sequential thinking, which comes from a hearty indoctrination in material logic, this kind of man, whom the Dirty Diana type of chick can easily outmaneuver and control. But this type of man will superimpose himself upon the first bar, which is the first beat on this image, to which the sound boom is depicted on this slide you are currently looking at. Am I slam dunking the ball into the basket yet? The central reason why the Dirty Diana type of chick, as is referred to from a street perspective, is able to outmaneuver a lot of men, especially if she has a insidious win-lose frame of mind. In other words, in order for her to win, she definitely got to make you lose. But the main reason she's able to outflank and outplay a lot of men is because she has attained the capabilities to color outside of the lines, so to speak, meaning she know how still on a limited basis, I might add, but nevertheless, she has attained this ability to tap into her unconscious mind, which, by the way, has 7 different categories and levels that make up its vast body of information, whereby the bulk of our life's impressions and incentives originates from. Like this image I'm currently showing you, our unconscious mind is like an enormous iceberg, whereas the largest portion of this gigantic monstrosity is out of sight, tiptoeing and hiding right below the surface of our conscious awareness. The Dirty Diana type of chick colors outside of the lines by using what OGs refer to as theatrics. These tactics and maneuvers is the means by which the Dirty Diana type of chick takes control of a man's premise, to which is the launching pad that his notions, values, and perspectives interprets reality, a particular topic, and the social dynamic he is contending with. So, these theatrics, as they are referred to from a street perspective, the Dirty Diana type of chick utilizes these methods to bring a man, particularly those who haven't developed their catching hand, but she utilized these theatrics to bring him into compliance and obedience. Once again, peep game. Men, by default, is highly visual, which makes him a visionary. Women by default have an overwhelming desire to be seen. This is why the feminine is attracted to glamour, because of the light it provides and its capacity to light up and illuminate a woman's persona and her physical makeup. Whereas us men, we identify with being the witness and the observer. The significance and importance of being an observer was the last topic of the last episode of the Chronicles of Gameology, and how it plays into a man's success or failure. Here's the link. Check it out once you get finished viewing this episode. Nevertheless, like I said earlier, if a Dirty Diana type of chick happens to lean heavily towards a win-lose frame of mind, then she will surely utilize these theatrics and her ability to color outside the lines to blur and make fuzzy a man's visionary apparatus. In short, she will re-engineer his premise, thereby making him more manageable and more easily to be outmaneuvered. A snapshot and a textbook illustration of these theatrics can be viewed from a movie called Obsessed. In this clip I'm getting ready to show you, the Dirty Diana type of chick has already blurred this man's vision, and now he regretfully realizes he has been outmaneuvered. After this clip, I will go deeper into the body of knowledge of the catching hand and disclose what a thorough chess player and a practicing gameologist, how they deal with this feisty female persona. And after this clip, we will pick it. In this clip, the Dirty Diana type of chick utilizes one of her seductive tactics and followed the lead character in this film into the men's bathroom. They both currently work for the same company, and they are both attending an office party. The lead character is married, by the way, so the Dirty Diana type of chick corners him inside of a bathroom stall. He hardly can process what is happening. Remember what I said earlier, how the Dirty Diana type of chick bypasses a man's logical thinking process. This is an example of what it looks like. Injecting strictly material logic into the cat and mouse interplay when dealing with a Dirty Diana kind of chick, it's like applying aftermarket Botox. Anywhere you administer it, it's going to be a problem. Also, make sure you hit that like and subscribe button and share this video. Like I said many times before, it would definitely do me a solid. Men who have an overly abundant, sequential, and rigid frame of mind are confused when dealing with this type of female persona. And all women have a percentage of a Dirty Diana type of chick lurking within them. But a lot of men is confused and disorientated because they seemingly want a woman to act like a man in the daytime and then turn around and act like a woman at night. There is a well-known adage and saying that goes, if you only have a hammer in your hand, then the whole world only appears to you as a nail. Seemingly, if your viewpoint is strictly molded by this material logic, then you will out of habit paint all the women you interact with, especially if their interaction is intimate, but you would paint them in a masculine and manly image. And a lot of men will strictly claim that the social dynamic surrounding the shortage of cooperative women is scarce and in short supply. But what's really the issue is the lack of knowledge of their catching hand. The problem is that the social dynamic doesn't truly fit their worldview and perspective, which have been molded overly dramatically by this material logic and an overemphasis on sequential thinking. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. If a man thinks that the social dynamic surrounding women equates to a nail 97% of the time, it makes sense. Because if he is consistently holding a hammer, then the social dynamic surrounding women will undoubtedly become a nail. But what's equally important is for me to point out this clarification. By all means, do not get the notion that material logic is not necessary and that it is unimportant. It's a requirement if a man is ever going to be a thorough chess player or a gameologist. It's the asymmetrical exclusive thinking, having only a single tool in one's toolbox, is the issue and problem at hand. As for a man's mental development and maneuverability across this chessboard we call life. And this is why it's an unnegotiable requirement for a man to have the skills to play both sides of the chessboard. Check out this current image I'm showing you now. Being able to play both sides of the chessboard means that one can render successful tactics and strategies from the queen side of the chessboard as well as from the king side of the chessboard with similar efficiency. And how this applies and evolves, a practitioner of this philosophy, which is referred to as the concept of game, implementing this in their improvement, is the fact that the king side of the chessboard, it symbolizes a man's conscious awareness, and the queen side of the chessboard, it symbolizes and represents the unconscious mind. Therefore, when a man is stagnant in his rhythm and cadence of thinking, this points to a deficiency and a flaw in his ability to play the queen side of the chessboard. In other words, he hasn't gained any efficiency in utilizing his own unconscious mind. So, the Dirty Diana type of chick would use these theatrics, as they are referred to within the body of knowledge of the catching hand, and she would utilize these tactics to prioritize what's important and urgent within the confines and happenings of a man's life. This is how she starts to outmaneuver and outfox him. In addition, there's a crucial element that the queen side of the chessboard, the unconscious mind, is responsible in directing. Also, don't forget, our unconscious mind has 7 levels and categories that make up its enormous body of information. But this crucial element, which is spearheaded by the unconscious mind, it is referred to as sensationalism. Now, sensationalism is a requirement in order to master life and all of its aspects. But like everything else, it can be misused. As follows, the Dirty Diana type of chick would push the envelope and overemphasize sensationalism, which, by the way, is different than emotions and feelings, which a lot of men get mixed up and confused. So, the Dirty Diana type of chick will dump a lot of passion and fervor into these kinds of theatrics and will deliver it with a sanctimonious type of demeanor that says, "Follow me to the promised land." And since a lot of cats are devoid of any efficiency in playing and tapping into the queen side of the chessboard, their unconscious mind, which directly feeds into their sensationalism, and which in turn their influences that they have over their feelings and emotions. So when a Dirty Diana type of chick utilize these type of theatrics in the way I just got through describing them, it then short circuits and bypasses a man's conscious awareness, so that he now ends up treating penny ante issues as 4 alarms, forest fires, and end up dumping unnecessary resources into foolish and petty endeavors. And all of this is the way that a Dirty Diana type of chick brings a man slowly but for surely into compliance and submissiveness. With this being the case, a practicing gameologist and a thorough chess player understands that for a man to become efficient at playing and tapping into the queen side of the chessboard, which represents his unconscious mind, also the king side as well, which represents his conscious awareness, then this requires knowledge. Check out this image, this new image I'm currently showing you. In this philosophy, which is referred to as the concept of game, knowledge is attained by the collective interplay of these 3 principles that's positioned at the top and on both sides of the lower points at the base of this triangle you're currently looking at. This configuration is called the triangle of exchange. I did an entire show breaking down this wisdom. Here's the link. Check it out once you get through viewing this episode. But like I said, on that podcast that I just shared the link to. This triangle of exchange has many, and I mean many manifestations and expressions, which constitutes the totality and the nuance of this philosophy referred to as the concept of game. Keeping that in mind, then these three principles accumulates to what equates to knowledge for a practicing gameologist, which is the principle of the known, the knower, and the principle of knowing. So ultimately, the application of knowledge and the concept of game equips the practitioner of this craft, the practicing gameologist, the ability to increase their pleasure, and as well, the ability to alleviate their discomfort. But let me pump the brakes and dive deeper into this 3-point configuration and how when there is a lack of comprehension of its internal workings, then one becomes prone to be outmaneuvered and easily taken advantage of by the Dirty Diana type of chick who has a win-lose frame of mind, and other individuals as well. Now, like I said earlier, there's many expressions and layers to these three principles. So taking the concept of the knower and the knowing on this image, the knower represents your individuality and the knowing represents your personality. For instance, your quest in order to establish your premise, your self-knowledge, which is a must in order for a man to have a firm footing when maneuvering across the chessboard of life. Then this is put to use to define who he is. Then these definitions that he gets from his premises, his self-knowledge, gives him his motives and preferences, which is why a practicing gameologist must have a thorough understanding of these factors, dealing with his motives and dealing with his preferences. But peep game. Then these preferences are combined to produce his personal values, which in turn constitutes his personality. All of this, what I just stated, ties back into what I said earlier regarding a man's vision and his premises that he makes the most of as he navigates across the chessboard of life. As a consequence of a lot of men not vetting and hammering out their preferences, which is one of the many expressions making up this concept referred to as the knowing on this 3-point configuration. But a lot of men are not then able to utilize a effective tool that neutralizes a lot of theatrics employed by the Dirty Diana type of chick. And this tool denotes what seasoned OGs and practicing gameologists refer to as putting a female on notice. This speaks to the ability of a man to decisively but smoothly let a woman know that he is aware of the theatrics she is using and exerting so she can maneuver him out of position. Many men current positives, which in then their future positives, are clouded and obscured. So they have a hard time putting females on notice because of the fear of losing sexual access to the Dirty Diana and her exotic exploits and the curling of the toes activities that she is well equipped at delivering. But a man's, his current positives and his future positives represents his knowing in this 3-point configuration, making up the concept of game, which points back to his vision, his premises, and his preferences, which gives him access to this vast body of information contained within his own unconscious mind. Putting a female on notice acts as a torch that illuminates the murky corners of a woman's generalities and all-inclusiveness notions that can be used to blur the lines and bypass a man's conscious awareness. On a final note, know that I have just scraped the surface as it pertains and surrounds these toxic subject matters I've been discussing in this podcast. But the Dirty Diana type of chick, a percentage is embedded into every female, some more than others. But the Dirty Diana type of chick, she lives within a form of psychosis, submerged into a world full of symbolic idioms and esoteric definitions. This is the reason why the unconscious mind is referred to as the underworld. In this world of shadows and transcendental concepts and truths, when a man taps into and learns to play both sides of the chessboard, the queen side, which represents his unconscious mind, and the king side, which represents his conscious awareness, then his game will be complete, giving him the verbal skills in order to put a female on notice, becoming a beacon and a nightlight by which the Dirty Diana type of chick will appreciate and recognize the wisdom in saying, "Ah, yes, that's what I meant." This beacon and nightlight, which is provided on the validity of a man's well-developed game, helps and accommodates her ability to give form and structure to her ideas and intentions. Like I said many times before, the concept of game is all about understanding the precursors and the fabric that give all scenarios and realities their texture. Now, that's checkmate. Thanks for watching. We'll definitely catch you on the next episode.